Let's move on now. The World Health Organization finally cleared the Made in India Covaxin earlier. Do you know how long they took to give this crucial clearance? 16 weeks. Do you know which vaccine the WHO cleared first of all? Pfizer. Do you know how long they took for this approval? 6 weeks only. So the big question, of course, is why did Covaxin take 16 weeks? The WHO kept citing trial data for the same. They wanted more or they weren't convinced. They said their approval process cannot be compromised. They don't cut corners, they said, which is good. After all, vaccines are a matter of life and death. Now, what if we told you that Pfizer's trials were compromised? That Pfizer's data is not clean? A whistleblower has blown the lid off Pfizer's clinical trials. Others have joined in to corroborate her version as well. Pfizer has not commented on the matter yet. We at WION have been reporting on how the company bullies other governments to sell its own vaccine. The sweeping demands that it makes. Pfizer demands sovereign assets as collateral for shots. It demands indemnity, meaning protection against any legal action. It controls donations, meaning even if you pay for the vaccine, Pfizer will decide how and where you can donate the same. It even decides delivery dates and where it will be sued in case something goes wrong. So if you buy Pfizer's vaccine, any dispute will be settled in secret arbitration courts, not as per the law of the land. We have told you all this before as well. It's shocking, but it pales in comparison to what I'm about to share with you. Pfizer's trial data could have been compromised. A former employee involved in the trials has blown the whistle. She says that Pfizer trial data was falsified. Serious compromises were made in the process. There were not enough trained vaccinators. Investigators were slow to follow up on adverse events. All these allegations have been published in the British Medical Journal, and we have a copy of the report. Now, we at WION will tell you about these damaging allegations. Let's tell you about the whistleblower first, the person who had the courage to speak about these medical lapses. Her name is Brooke Jackson. She worked with a company called Vaccination. Vaccination is a subcontractor of Pfizer. It is the company that Pfizer hired to conduct the trials. Jackson was involved in the Pfizer vaccine trial, but she didn't last very long. Jackson was fired within 2 weeks. That's because she complained about the lapses. So what were these lapses? Let's tell you about them. Number one, the labs were poorly managed. Pfizer tested its vaccine at more than 150 sites. At 3 sites, there were clear red flags. The biggest one is linked to the patients. Their identities could have been compromised. At one of the sites, Jackson found vaccine packaging just left out in the open. The packaging had the identification numbers of the participants on it. This is a very serious lapse. You see, when a vaccine is put through a trial, not everyone gets the shot. Only half of them are given the vaccine. The rest are given what is known as a placebo. Who has got what needs to remain a secret. This is how you protect the integrity of the trial. But here, their identification numbers were just left out in the open. Anyone who saw it could identify the patients who got the vaccine, and they could potentially try to influence the outcome. This wasn't the only lapse, sadly. Let's come now to problem number 2. Apparently, Vaccination, the company conducting the trials, did not have adequate staff. Some patients showed symptoms consistent with the coronavirus. There were not enough people present to collect the swab samples for a test. Reports say this lapse could have skewed the data altogether. This entirely defeats the very purpose of a trial. The vaccine is being tested to see if it works against the virus. If the recipients get the shot and still get infected, it raises plenty of questions. Is the vaccine effective in fending off the virus? Can it stop the disease from progressing further? How effectively are the antibodies working? We are not saying that the Pfizer vaccine is ineffective, but these questions must be answered because vaccines are approved based on this trial data. And if the trials are compromised, it puts a big question mark on the vaccine itself. These were the problems that stood out. Jackson, the whistleblower, made 6 other observations that can potentially skew the results. They are a part of this report. And let's now read it out for you. Participants placed in a hallway after injection and not being monitored by clinical staff. The lack of timely follow-up of patients who experience adverse events. Protocol deviations not being reported. Vaccines not being stored at proper temperatures. Mislabeled lab specimens, and targeting Ventavire staff for reporting these types of problems. What did Jackson do about these problems? First, she raised them with the company. Nothing happened. Then she went to the trial sites herself. She gathered photographic evidence of the problems. Instead of fixing them, the company questioned Jackson herself. She decided to escalate the matter. Wrote to the US Food and Drug Administration. This is the American regulator that approves vaccines, the one that also approved Pfizer. So what did the FDA do about her complaint? They sent her an acknowledgement saying that the FDA, and I'm quoting, could not comment on any investigation that her complaint might open. A few days later, Jackson received a phone call. It was from an FDA inspector. They discussed the complaint, and after that, nothing happened. You might dismiss this report saying it's just one woman's version, but there's so much more to this story. There are other former employees of the company who had similar concerns. One of them wrote to Jackson and said this, and I quote, "Everything that you complained about was spot on." 2 other former employees have also spoken about the same issue. Their identities, of course, remain hidden. One of them said they had never experienced such a helter-skelter work environment. Here is another quote. "I've never had to do what they were asking me to do ever. It just seemed like something a little different from normal, the things that were allowed and expected." One of them raises serious doubts about the data. "I don't think it was good, clean data. It's a crazy mess." We're talking about the world's leading pharma giant and the world's leading drug regulator. Both evidently cut corners and ignored red flags. Pfizer and the FDA want the world to trust their assessments. These revelations show that they cannot be taken at face value. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.